That cold evening, no one expected a rusty metal door to change a life. What started as just another abandoned storage unit became a story the whole town tried to explain, and few had the courage to tell. Before we begin, subscribe and turn on the bell. Here, we show that behind locked doors and forgotten boxes, there are still human hearts. Elena gripped the steering wheel of her old Ford, the engine ticking like a weary heartbeat as she pulled into the storage facility lot. The sun hung low over the flat sprawl of suburban warehouses, painting the chain-link fence in bruised oranges and purples. It was late September, the kind of evening where the air carried the faint bite of coming frost, mixed with the sharper tang of hot asphalt and distant diesel fumes. Her hands, calloused from too many shifts at the diner, trembled slightly as she cut the ignition. In the passenger seat, her daughter Mia fidgeted with the frayed strap of her backpack, her 8-year-old eyes wide but silent, taking in the rows of identical metal doors that stretched like forgotten promises along the concrete. They'd driven here from their cramped apartment on the edge of town, the one with the leaky ceiling and the landlord's endless notices taped to the door. Elena was 37, widowed 2 years now after Tom's accident on the oil rig, gone in an instant, leaving her with bills that piled like snowdrifts and a grief that never quite melted. The diner paid just enough to keep the lights on, but not enough for Mia's school clothes or the dental work she needed. Elena had scraped together her last savings, $800 from overtime, and a garage sale of Tom's old tools to bid on this unit at the auction. Storage auctions were a gamble, whispered about in line at the grocery store. Junk for most, a windfall for the lucky few. But for Elena it was desperation dressed as hope. One more risk, one more door to unlock. Before the bank foreclosed on what little they had left, the facility manager, a grizzled man named Hank with a clipboard and a perpetual squint, led her to Unit 47 after the bidding war ended, hers by a narrow margin against a couple of flippers from the city. "Abandoned for over a year," he'd said, his voice gravelly under the buzzing fluorescent lights that flickered on as dusk deepened. Owner stopped paying, vanished. Could be nothing, could be something. Elena nodded, her throat tight as he handed her the key. The lock was rusted, the door scarred from years of weather and neglect. She hesitated, key in hand, the metal warm from the fading sun. Mia tugged at her sleeve. "Mum, is it treasure, like in the stories?" Eleanor forced a smile, but inside her stomach knotted. Treasure, or just more weight to carry? She turned the key, the bolt scraping like a reluctant confession, and pulled the door halfway open. The interior was a dim cavern, lit only by the dying light spilling in. Shapes loomed in the shadows, hulking forms draped in dusty tarps, the air thick with the scent of stale oil and something metallic, like old circuits baking in the heat. No visible clutter, no piles of furniture or boxes like the unit she'd seen in online videos. Just these, machines, bulky, angular things that hummed faintly, or maybe that was her imagination. One looked like a vending machine, but taller, with a blank screen and slots that gleamed dully. Another was a console of sorts, wires snaking from its base like veins. She pushed the door wider, heart pounding, but the shadows held their secrets. "Not tonight, baby," she murmured to Mia, who peered in with wide-eyed curiosity. "We'll come back tomorrow when it's light." Eleanor relocked the door, the click echoing down the empty corridor, past doors that stood sentinel in the twilight. They drove home in silence, the radio off. The only sound, the rhythmic thump of tires over cracked pavement. Mia fell asleep against the window, her small chest rising and falling, oblivious to the storm in her mother's mind. Back in the apartment, Elena tucked Mia into bed, the room lit by a single lamp that cast long shadows over posters of faraway places they'd never afford. She sank onto the sagging couch, the stack of unpaid bills mocking her from the coffee table, $1, $200 to the electric company, $500 for Mia's braces, the funeral costs that lingered like ghosts. Tom's face flashed in her memory, his laugh, rough hands fixing the sink, the way he'd promised they'd get out of this town someday. Now it was just her, fighting to keep the pieces from shattering. What if the unit was empty? Just echoes and regret? Or worse, something dangerous, something that could drag them under. She'd heard stories at the diner, units with drugs hidden in walls, or liens that tied you up in court. But there was that other pull, the whisper of possibility. What if it was valuable, tools she could sell, or electronics to refurbish? Enough to pay the debts, maybe even enroll in night classes for that accounting certificate she'd always wanted. Elena stared at the ceiling, the faint buzz of the neighbor's TV seeping through the walls. Sleep came in fits, her dreams tangled with the shapes in Unit 47, the machines waiting, silent and inscrutable, like relics from a life she couldn't yet fathom. Morning broke grey and overcast, the kind of light that made everything feel heavier. Elena dropped Mia at school with a quick kiss and a promise of pancakes if things went well. She drove back to the facility alone, the lot emptier now under the haze. Hank was there, sweeping dust from the entrance, his nod brief as she passed. "Careful in there," he called, but she was already at the door, key in hand. This time, she wouldn't hesitate. The lock gave way easier in the daylight, the door groaning open to reveal the unit's contents more clearly. The space was about 10 by 15, concrete floor stained with oil spots, walls lined with metal shelves that sagged under the weight. No personal items, no clothes, no photos, nothing to hint at the owner who'd left it all behind. Just the machines, 5 or 6 of them, arranged in a loose semicircle as if for some forgotten demonstration. The largest was a hulking contraption, waist-high, with a glass front fogged by dust and panels dotted with buttons and dials. It resembled an old arcade game, but bulkier, with a faint whir emanating from its core. Beside it, a slimmer unit, like a photocopier crossed with a safe, its door ajar just enough to show stacks of yellowed paper inside. The air was cooler here, laced with the dry scent of electronics long dormant, and an underlying mustiness, like secrets sealed too long. Elena's breath caught. This wasn't junk. These were deliberate, specialized, bizarre even. She stepped inside, the door clanging shut behind her, plunging the space into a dim intimacy broken only by slivers of light through a high vent. Her fingers brushed the nearest machine, tracing the edge of a control panel. Dust puffed up, and for a moment she imagined it lighting up, coming alive under her touch, but it stayed silent. What were they for? Medical? Industrial? Something more sinister? The questions swirled, mingling with the fear that this find might not save her, but bind her instead. She spent the morning cataloguing what she could, phone flashlight cutting through the gloom, her hand steadying as she uncovered a faded label on one. Prototype Series 7. Do not operate without clearance. Prototype? Her pulse quickened. This wasn't a windfall. It was a puzzle. One that could unravel everything if she wasn't careful. As the sun climbed higher, casting beams across the concrete, Elena locked the door again, not ready to dig deeper. Not yet. But the weight of it followed her home, a quiet tension building in her chest, the first thread of a decision that would test every ounce of her resolve. Elena drove away from the storage facility, with the key burning a hole in her pocket, the afternoon sun slanting through the windshield like an accusation. The roads blurred past, strip malls fading into residential streets lined with sagging porches and overgrown lawns. But her mind stayed locked in Unit 47, those machines, not the random cast-offs of a hasty move, but something engineered, purposeful. The label's words echoed, Prototype Series 7, do not operate without clearance. Clearance from who? And why abandon them here, in this forgotten corner of suburbia, like relics from a failed experiment? By the time she picked up Mia from school, the girl's chatter about a playground game barely pierced the fog in her head. "Mum, you look funny. Did you find gold?" Mia asked. Climbing into the car with her backpack slung over one shoulder, a smudge of crayon on her cheek, Elena managed a half-smile, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Not gold, sweetie. Just old stuff. We'll see tomorrow." But as they pulled into the apartment complex, the stack of mail waiting in the box felt heavier. Another overdue notice from the bank, the red ink bleeding through the envelope. She crumpled it in her fist, the paper rasping like dry leaves. Dinner was macaroni from a box, the steam rising in lazy curls under the kitchen's harsh bulb. Mia ate with the focus of a child who knew not to ask for seconds, while Elena pushed noodles around her plate, her thoughts drifting back to the unit. What if those machines were worth something? She pictured them humming to life. Screens flickering with data, buttons yielding secrets that could pay off the debts. Buy Mia those braces, maybe even a used car that didn't sputter on hills. But the other images crept in unbidden, flashing lights that weren't friendly, wires tangled like traps, a door she couldn't relock fast enough. Tom's voice whispered in her memory, steady from their last fishing trip. "You got to weigh the risks, Elle. Not every door leads home." She washed the dishes in silence, the water hot against her skin, suds swirling down the drain like unanswered questions. Night fell heavy, the apartment's thin walls amplifying the world's distant hum. Cars on the highway, a dog's bark 2 doors down. Mia was asleep, her stuffed bear clutched tight, but Elena lay awake on the couch. The blanket pulled to her chin. The ceiling fan whirred overhead, casting shadows that danced like the machine's outlines. She imagined opening them fully, panels sliding back to reveal stacks of cash, or blueprints for inventions that could change everything. Then the darker turn, evidence of something illegal, a trail leading back to her, police at the door while Mia watched from the hallway. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone, scrolling through auction forums in the blue glow. Stories of finds like hers, old computers sold for scrap, medical equipment auctioned to clinics. But prototypes, that word stuck, evoking labs and corporations, men in suits who didn't forget their property. Sleep came eventually, fractured by dreams of gears grinding, a single light blinking on in the dark. The next morning, Elena woke to rain pattering against the window, the sky a uniform grey that matched her mood. She brewed coffee strong enough to cut the fog, sipping it black while Mia got ready for school. "Be good today," she said, kissing her daughter's forehead. The drive to the facility was slick with puddles, wipers slapping rhythmically. The lot was deserted, puddles reflecting the overcast sky like shattered mirrors. Hank was inside the office, hunched over a ledger, the smell of stale coffee mingling with the damp concrete scent as she passed. Unit 47's door loomed, water beading on the metal. She unlocked it with less hesitation this time, the bolt giving a soft click. Pushing it open, she flicked on her phone's light, the beam cutting through the gloom. The machines waited unchanged, their forms sharper in the diffused light filtering through the vent. She started with the largest one, the hulking arcade-like beast. Kneeling, she wiped dust from its base, revealing a manufacturer's plate. Vortex Dynamics, Experimental Gaming Interface, 2018. Gaming? It didn't fit. The dials suggested more. Like controls for something industrial or worse, surveillance. Her fingers hovered over a side panel, latched but not sealed. Heart thudding, she pried it open with a screwdriver from her glove box. Inside, wires coiled neatly, connected to a dusty power cord. No cash, no jewels, just components that looked high-end, circuit boards etched with tiny scripts she couldn't read. Emboldened, she moved to the slimmer unit, the one with the ajar door. Pulling it wider, she found not paper, but a stack of manuals, yellowed and dog-eared. User Guide, Neural Feedback Simulator. The cover read, diagrams of headsets and sensors sprawling across the pages. Neural, like brain tech? Elena's stomach twisted. This wasn't hobbyist gear, it was cutting edge. The kind of stuff from tech startups that promised revolutions, but often vanished in scandals. She flipped through, pages whispering, until a loose sheet fluttered out, a handwritten note, ink faded, test run failed, side effects noted, store securely until recall. J.R. Side effects? Her mind raced to headlines she'd skimmed, experimental devices causing harm, lawsuits buried in fine print. The rain drummed harder outside, echoing in the unit like a warning. She was about to close the manual when footsteps crunched on the gravel. "Everything all right in there?" Hank's voice, gruff but concerned, from the doorway. He stepped in, wiping rain from his jacket, eyes narrowing at the machines. A retired mechanic, by his calloused hands and oil-stained shirt. He'd mentioned once over coffee in the office. Worked rigs like Tom's before settling here. "Saw your light. Those ain't standard storage." Elena straightened, clutching the manual. "I don't know what they are. Prototypes, maybe. Gaming or something medical." She showed him the note, her voice steady despite the knot in her throat. Hank squinted, rubbing his chin. "Vortex Dynamics. Heard of 'em. Small outfit, went bust a few years back. Rumors of shady tests, folks getting sick from their gear. You thinking of selling?" She hesitated, the moral weight settling like the damp air. Sell without knowing? Call the cops and risk losing it all? "I need to understand first. What if it's dangerous?" Hank nodded slowly, glancing at the machines. "Smart. I've seen units like this before, abandoned projects. But if it's tech, could be worth a bundle legally, or trouble if the wrong eyes see it." He paused, the rain a steady backdrop. "I can help you check the others if you want. No promises, but two heads." Gratitude warmed her chest, unexpected in this cold space. For the first time since Tom's death, she didn't feel utterly alone. They worked in tandem, Hank's steady hands revealing more. A smaller machine with a helmet-like attachment, labeled Empathy Trainer Prototype. Empathy? It sounded almost hopeful. A tool for connection in a disconnected world. But the note's side effects lingered, a shadow over the possibility. As they packed up, thunder rumbling distant, Elena locked the door with a firmer resolve. This wasn't just a gamble anymore, it was a crossroads, pulling her toward answers that could heal or haunt. Driving home through the downpour, Mia's drawing from school waiting on the dash. A simple house with two stick figures. She wondered if courage meant opening every door or knowing when to call for light. The rain had eased to a drizzle by the time Elena and Hank returned to Unit 47 the next afternoon. The sky still heavy with clouds that muffled the world outside. Elena's boots splashed through shallow puddles in the lot, the water cold seeping through the frayed laces, mirroring the chill that had settled in her bones since finding that note. Mia was with a neighbor after school, a rare favor Elena had asked for, buying her these hours to unravel the unit's secrets without her daughter's innocent questions pulling at her focus. Hank carried a toolbox from his truck, its metal clanging softly against his thigh, a sound that grounded her amid the uncertainty. "Brought some multimeters and extension cords," he said, his voice low as they approached the door. "If these things need juice, we'll see what they do. But careful, old tech like this can bite." She nodded, unlocking the door with a hand that no longer trembled quite so much. The interior smelled sharper now, the damp air mixing with the metallic tang of exposed circuits from yesterday's prying. Sunlight slanted through the vent in thin, watery beams, illuminating dust motes that danced like hesitant ghosts around the machines. They stood in silence for a moment, the semicircle of hulks facing them like silent judges. The largest one, the Vortex Dynamics prototype, loomed in the center, its glass front streaked with condensation from the humidity. Elena's eyes lingered on the empathy trainer, the smallest unit, its helmet attachment dangling from a hook like a forgotten thought. What kind of side effects could a machine like that cause? Headaches? Worse, memories stirred of news clips about virtual reality gone wrong, users lost in simulations that blurred reality. Hank knelt by the power cord of the large machine, plugging it into the extension reel he'd snaked from outside. "Start simple," he muttered, flipping a switch on the wall outlet. A low hum filled the space, the kind that vibrated through the concrete floor and into Elena's soles, awakening something dormant. She watched as he traced wires, his fingers steady from years of troubleshooting engines that could kill if mishandled. "These look custom," he said, peering at the circuit board. "Not off the shelf." Vortex was pushing boundaries, heard they were into immersive tech for therapy, training, but if JR noted side effects... He trailed off, glancing at her. Elena felt the weight of his gaze, not pitying but steady, like an anchor in the swelling tide of her doubts. She moved to the slimmer unit, the neural feedback simulator, pulling the manuals from its compartment. Pages crinkled under her touch, diagrams of neural pathways snaking across the paper like maps to hidden minds. One section detailed empathic resonance protocols, designed to sync users' emotions, fostering understanding in couples or teams. It sounded almost beautiful, a bridge across isolation, but the fine print warned of emotional bleed where simulated feelings lingered, unbidden. Elena's throat tightened, thinking of her own grief, the way Tom's absence echoed in every quiet moment. What if this tech could mend that, or exploit it? She set the manual aside and tugged at a side latch, revealing a compartment with a small data drive, its surface etched with serial numbers. "Hank, look at this." He joined her, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. Together, they examined it, the drive cool and unassuming in her palm. "Could be logs," he said. "Test data. If it's encrypted, we'll need a reader." But before she could respond, a faint click echoed from the large machine, the one they'd just powered. Elena's head snapped up. The hum had deepened, and now a soft green light pulsed on its control panel like a heartbeat stirring. "Did you touch anything?" she whispered, stepping back instinctively. Hank shook his head, eyes widening. "Just the cord. Must be residual power or..." He approached cautiously, the toolbox forgotten at his feet. The machine's glass front cleared slightly, frost melting under an internal warmth, revealing a screen that flickered to life. Static snowed across it at first, then resolved into a menu. "Vortex interface ready. Initialize session." Below, options scrolled. Empathy mode, feedback loop, diagnostic run. Elena's pulse raced, the air in the unit suddenly thicker, charged. "Turn it off," she said, her voice barely above the hum. But Hank hesitated, transfixed. "Wait, this could tell us everything." She wanted to argue, to slam the door and walk away, but curiosity rooted her. The screen's glow cast eerie shadows on their faces, illuminating the lines of worry etched around her eyes, the faint scar on Hank's knuckle from some long-ago rig mishap. He tapped a button marked Diagnostic, the machine responding with a series of beeps, soft and methodical. Text scrolled, System Integrity, 87%. Last user, JR. Session interrupted. Anomalies detected. Emotional overload in Subject 4. Elena's breath hitched. Subject 4, human trials. The note's side effects crystallized, not abstract but real, someone hurt by this. The machine whirred louder, a fan kicking in, pulling cooler air from the vents. Then, abruptly, it spoke, a synthesized voice, calm and neutral. "Welcome back, operator. Resume previous calibration." Elena froze, the words hanging in the dim space like an invitation to the unknown. Hank reached for the power switch, but she stopped him, her hand on his arm. "No, We need to know why it was left here. Fear coiled in her gut, visions flashing, authorities seizing the unit, her name in reports, Mia without a home. But beneath it, a spark. Responsibility. The kind Tom had embodied, fixing what was broken instead of discarding it. They powered it down carefully, the screen fading to black, leaving the unit quieter than before, as if holding its breath. Hank unplugged everything, his movements deliberate. "This is bigger than scrap," he said, packing tools. JR, probably the owner. Vortex folded in 19, scandals buried. If this gear's tied to lawsuits. He met her eyes, the rain picking up again outside, pattering on the roof like impatient fingers. Elena nodded, pocketing the data drive. The moral fork sharpened. Destroy it all. Claim ignorance, or dig deeper, risk the shadows for a chance at light. Driving home through the gathering dusk, the wipers sweeping arcs of water, Elena's mind replayed the voice. Mechanical, yet almost human. Mia greeted her at the door with a hug, smelling of crayons and rain, oblivious. As Elena stirred soup on the stove, the steam rising in comforting wisps, she confided fragments to Hank over a quick call, his voice a steady rumble on the line. "We'll check that drive tomorrow. Library computers, no traces." Gratitude swelled again. This man from the edges of her world becoming a quiet ally. But sleep that night was fitful, the apartment's walls closing in, dreams of glowing screens pulling her into simulations where Tom's face flickered, then vanished. The machine had turned on, unbidden, whispering of unfinished stories. Elena woke before dawn, staring at the ceiling, the decision crystallizing. She wouldn't run. Not from this. For Mia, for the life they deserved. She'd face whatever secrets hummed in the dark. The library's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile pallor over the rows of battered computers, their screens flickering like hesitant confessions. Eleanor sat hunched in a corner carrel, the data drive clutched in her fist like a forbidden key, its plastic edges digging into her palm. It was mid-morning, the rain from yesterday, a distant memory, replaced by a crisp autumn chill that seeped through the building's thin windows. Mia was at school, her lunch packed with the last of the peanut butter, and Elena had called in sick to the diner, her first time in months, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Hank waited outside in his truck, engine idling with a low rumble, giving her space, but close enough to step in if things unraveled. She plugged the drive into the USB port, the computer whirring to life with a mechanical sigh. Files bloomed on the screen. Logs, schematics, audio clips labeled with dates from 3 years ago. Her heart thudded against her ribs, the keyboard cool under her fingertips as she clicked the first folder. Test sessions. A video file opened, grainy footage of a dimly lit room, not unlike Unit 47 but cleaner, wires snaking across a table. A man in a lab coat, mid-40s, wire-rimmed glasses, dark hair streaked with grey, adjusted a helmet on a volunteer, a young woman with nervous eyes. "Subject 4, the man said, his voice tinny through the speakers. "We're mapping emotional resonance today. Relax into it." The machine in the background was unmistakable, the empathy trainer, its screen glowing softly. Elena leaned closer, the library's hush amplifying the video's intimacy. The woman nodded, slipping the helmet on, and the machine hummed to life. Colors swirled on the screen, pulses of blue and red syncing like heartbeats. The man's face, JR is, filled with focus, then concern as the woman's expression shifted, a flinch, a gasp. "Pull back," she murmured, but he hesitated, jotting notes. The session cut abruptly, the woman ripping off the helmet, tears streaming. It felt like drowning in someone else's pain. JR reached for her, apologetic, but the video ended there. Elena's breath caught, a chill tracing her spine. Side effects, Real and raw, not just data, but lives touched, perhaps scarred. She scrolled deeper, emails from Vortex Dynamics executives. JR, prototypes show promise for corporate training, empathy modules could revolutionize HR, but push the limits. Investors want results. Another chain, frantic, recall initiated. Anomalies in 20% of trials, emotional bleed leading to dissociation, shut down production. The company had folded amid whispers of lawsuits. JR, the lead engineer who'd signed off on the tests. A final file, his resignation letter, dated just before the unit's abandonment. I can't continue. The tech amplifies what's already broken in us, storing prototypes until I can make it right. Make it right how? Elena's mind reeled, the screen's glow reflecting in her eyes, wide, with a mix of horror and pity. This wasn't crime, not in the violent sense, no drugs, no weapons, but a moral wreckage, ambition crashing against human fragility. The chair creaked as she pushed back, rubbing her temples, the faint scent of old books and printer ink grounding her. What now? These machines could be evidence in buried cases, drawing lawyers or regulators to her door. Or they could be salvaged, sold to ethical buyers, funding a future for her and Mia. But touching them felt like inheriting JR's unfinished burden, the weight of decisions that echoed Tom's own regrets, the rig job he'd taken for the overtime, only to pay with his life. Her phone buzzed, a text from Hank. All good? She typed back, found the story, meet me at the unit. The drive to the facility blurred in a haze of overcast sky and fallen leaves skittering across the road, the asphalt still damp from an early mist. Hank's truck was already parked when she arrived, its door slamming with a solid thud as he stepped out, thermos in hand. Coffee, he offered, pouring a steaming cup, the aroma rich and bitter, cutting through the industrial yard's pervasive oil scent. Elena accepted it gratefully, the warmth seeping into her chilled fingers. They walked the corridor in silence, fluorescent bulbs buzzing overhead, casting long shadows that danced like unresolved questions on the peeling paint. Inside Unit 47, the air felt thicker, expectant, the machines arrayed like silent witnesses. Hank listened as she recounted the files, his face creasing deeper with each detail, the lines around his eyes etching stories of his own. Lost colleagues on rigs, experiments with machinery that promised safety but delivered sorrow. JR sounds like a man who bit off more than he could chew, he said, setting the thermos on a shelf, the metal clinking softly. Vortex chased the next big thing, but forgot the human part. I've fixed enough gear to know. Tech doesn't care if you're ready. He knelt by the empathy trainer, examining the helmet with careful hands, turning it over to reveal faint scratches inside, as if worn by desperate fingers. Elena's gaze drifted to the large machine, its panel still dark since yesterday's awakening. What if we turn it on again, fully this time? See what JR left unfinished. The words hung between them, a dare wrapped in doubt. Hank straightened, wiping dust from his jeans, his expression a mirror of her turmoil. Practical caution warring with the pull of understanding. Risky. Could fry itself or worse, log our access. But if it's about making things right... He trailed off, the distant hum of traffic beyond the chain-link fence underscoring the isolation. She nodded, the decision settling like a stone in her chest. For Mia, who deserved a mother who faced the hard paths, not the easy escapes. They connected the extension cord, the hum building gradually, a vibration that resonated through the concrete and into their bones. Hank initiated the diagnostic again, the screen flickering alive, the synthesized voice returning. Calibration resuming. Warning, unresolved session detected. Proceed? Elena's hand hovered over the controls, sweat beading despite the cool air, her pulse syncing with the machine's rhythm. She pressed yes, and the interface bloomed, waves of light cascading, pulling them into its digital tide. Audio logs played. J.R.'s voice, weary and alone. Session 47. Empathy link holding, but the bleed. It's not just simulation. It's rewriting. I felt her loss, her everything. Can't stop now, the data's too pure. Pauses stretched, breaths ragged. Then a sob, cut short. The machine pulsed brighter, and suddenly the helmet on the smaller unit lit up, sinking unbidden. Elena stepped back, heart slamming, as fragmented images ghosted on the screen, a child's drawing, a wedding photo, J.R.'s face dissolving into exhaustion. "It's alive with him," she whispered, terror mingling with compassion. Hank powered it down swiftly, the lights dying with a whine, leaving the unit dim once more. "Enough," he said, voice rough. "This ain't treasure, it's a ghost. We document it all. Contact the right people, Vortex remnants or estate lawyers for J.R. Sell what's clean, return the rest." But as they locked the door, the key turning with a finality that echoed down the corridor, Elena felt the crossroads sharpen. Keep silent, repurpose the tech for good, or expose it, risking everything for the truth J.R. couldn't face. The sun broke through the clouds outside, gilding the metal doors in fleeting gold, a reminder that light followed even the longest shadows. Driving home, Hank's truck trailing hers, she glanced at the data drive on the seat, its secrets now hers to steward. For the first time, fear felt less like a chain and more like a guide, pointing toward a path where integrity might just rebuild what grief had torn apart. Elena pulled into the apartment complex as twilight bled across the sky, the dashboard clock glowing 6:17, a quiet accusation of time slipping away. The data drive sat heavy in her jacket pocket, its presence a constant pressure against her side, like a secret too big to carry alone. Mia's laughter floated from the neighbor's porch as she ran out, waving a drawing of a rainbow machine that makes people happy, her small feet splashing through shallow puddles left from the afternoon's brief shower. Elena scooped her up, burying her face in Mia's hair, inhaling the faint scent of shampoo and crayons, a momentary shield against the storm brewing inside her. "Missed you, kiddo," she murmured, the words grounding her as they climbed the stairs, the metal railing cool and damp under her hand. Inside, the apartment felt smaller, the walls pressing in with their familiar scuffs and the faint must of damp carpet. Elena heated leftovers, canned chili over rice, the steam rising in lazy spirals under the kitchen light, its bulb flickering like an uncertain heartbeat. Mia chattered about school, her fork scraping the plate, oblivious to the way her mother's eyes kept drifting to the window, where the storage facility's distant silhouette loomed in her mind. Hank had texted earlier, "We'll sort it tomorrow, sleep if you can." But sleep was a distant shore, the night's quiet broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the building settling. She tucked Mia in early, reading a story about a lost key that unlocked hidden gardens, the words blurring as her thoughts tangled with J.R.'s voice from the logs, raw, fractured, echoing her own unspoken grief. Tom's photo watched from the nightstand, his smile steady, but tonight it felt like judgment. What would he say? Walk away from the machines, preserve the fragile peace they'd clawed for? Or dive deeper, turn potential ruin into redemption? Elena sank onto the couch, the cushions sagging under her weight, and pulled out the drive. In the laptop's blue glow, she replayed a snippet of the audio, J.R.'s confession looping. "It's rewriting. I felt her loss. Can't stop now." The synthesized plea from the machine replayed in her head, mechanical yet laced with human desperation. Emotional overload, not just a glitch, but a mirror to the isolation that had swallowed J.R., and now threatened to pull her under too. Morning arrived with a frost-kissed edge, the windows etched in delicate patterns that melted under her breath as she brewed coffee, Mia bundled into her coat for school, backpack slung over one shoulder. Her questions about the special boxes met with Elena's evasive smile. "Soon, baby. Mommy's figuring it out." The drive to the facility wound through neighborhoods awakening slowly, leaves crunching under tires, the air sharp with wood smoke from distant chimneys. Hank was waiting by Unit 47, his truck's tailgate down, a folding table set up with tools, and a borrowed laptop from the library. His nod was brief, eyes shadowed from his own restless night, the thermos of coffee steaming between them like a shared ritual. "Plugged in the drive last night," he said, pouring a cup, the liquid dark and aromatic, cutting through the unit's stale air as they stepped inside. The door groaned shut behind them, sealing the space in dim intimacy. Slivers of sunlight piercing the vent like hesitant fingers. The machines stood sentinel, their forms less alien now but no less imposing, dust motes swirling in the beams. Hank connected the drive to the laptop, the screen blooming with files, his calloused fingers navigating folders with a mechanic's precision. More logs here, JR's personal stuff, emails to a wife maybe, and schematics for fixes he never finished. Elena leaned over his shoulder, the scent of his aftershave mingling with the metallic tang of the room, a reminder of alliances forged in unlikely places. The first email opened. "Sarah, the tests are crossing lines I can't uncross. The empathy link, it pulls you into others' pain so deep, it's like living their regrets." Subject 4. Quit today. I saw my own failures in her eyes. We need to talk. Sarah, a name, a tether to the man behind the prototypes. Elena's chest tightened, the words stirring memories of her own late-night calls to Tom, voices cracking over static lines. "He was trying to help people connect," she whispered, scrolling to attachments, blueprints for a safeguard module, notes scribbled in margins. "Limit bleed to 30 seconds. Test on self first." But the deeper files unraveled the tragedy. Medical reports. JR is name stamped across them. Chronic dissociation post-trial. Recommend cessation. He'd used the machine on himself, chasing data through his own unraveling mind, the tech amplifying isolation until it broke him. Vortex had cut him loose amid the scandal, his storage payments lapsing as he vanished, perhaps to a quiet end, leaving these ghosts behind. No crime, but a cascade of neglected responsibilities, ambition devouring empathy. Hank rubbed his chin, the stubble rasping. "Man was drowning in it, like those rigs I fixed, pushed too hard, and the whole system fails. You thinking of reaching out? Find Sarah, return this mess to her." The question hung, the unit's silence amplifying the crossroads. Elena paced the concrete, her boots echoing softly, the cool floor seeping through soles worn thin. Call the police? They'd seize everything. Auction it off, leaving her with nothing but questions and empty pockets. Pretend ignorance, strip the machines for parts, sell the circuits, the casings. Build a small repair shop from the scraps? It tempted, a pragmatic path to braces for Mia, rent paid, a buffer against the bank's shadow. But the voice from the machine echoed, JR's unfinished work demanding more. Integrity, Tom would call it, the quiet courage to honor what was broken, not exploit it. Hank watched her, his presence steady, a mirror reflecting her turmoil without judgment. "I've walked away from plenty," he said finally, closing the laptop with a soft click. "Lost friends to it. But this feels like it chose you. Dig a little more, then decide. I'll back you." They spent the afternoon cautiously powering select components, the hum filling the space like a reluctant confession. One smaller machine, a feedback calibrator, lit up without incident, its screen displaying benign diagnostics, heart rates synced, emotions mapped in harmless graphs. But when they synced it to the empathy trainer, the air thickened, the synthesized voice returning, linking profiles, Warning, residual data from operator JR detected. Images flickered, a woman's face, Sarah perhaps blurred in tears, a child's toy abandoned on a lab floor. Elena's hand flew to the power switch, shutting it down, her breath ragged. The emotional bleed JR warned of brushed her, a fleeting wave of sorrow not her own, sharp as a winter wind. "It's not just machines," she said, voice trembling. "It's pieces of him, of them." Hank unplugged everything, the sudden silence deafening, broken only by their breathing and the distant rumble of a truck in the yard. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the chain-link fence, the asphalt warming faintly under fading rays. Elena locked the door, the bolt scrape a punctuation to the day's revelations. Driving home alone, Mia's pickup drawing waiting on the seat, a machine with smiling faces, she felt the moral weight shift from fear to resolve. Contact Sarah, expose the prototypes legally, perhaps salvage what could heal without harm. It meant risk, lawyers, scrutiny, the chance of losing the windfall, but also a chance to close JR's circle, to rebuild not on secrets, but on truth. That evening, as Mia slept and the apartment filled with the soft patter of rain restarting, Elena searched online for Sarah's name, piecing fragments from public records. An obituary notice from 2 years back. JR, gone suddenly, heart failure amid ongoing health issues. No mention of the tech, but a surviving spouse in a nearby town. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. The screen's glow illuminating tears she hadn't realized were falling. Courage wasn't absence of fear, but stepping through it, for the unfinished lives, for her own. Tomorrow, she'd call. The rain drummed on, a steady rhythm, washing clean the path ahead. The phone trembled in Elena's hand as she sat at the kitchen table, the cordless receiver slick with the condensation from her cooling coffee mug. Dawn light filtered through the thin curtains, painting the room in pale greys, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth drifting in from the cracked window. Mia was still asleep, her soft breathing a distant anchor in the quiet apartment. But Elena's world had narrowed to the number she'd scrawled on a napkin, Sarah's pieced from an online directory, and a grainy obituary photo that mirrored the blurred face from the machine's logs. Her thumb hovered over the call button, heart thudding like the distant rumble of a truck on the highway. What if Sarah hung up, or worse, demanded everything, leaving Elena with nothing but echoes of her own desperation? She pressed dial, the tone beeping sharply, cutting through the hush. 3 rings, then a voice, soft, edged with weariness, like someone who'd long ago folded grief into routine. "Hello?" Elena swallowed, her free hand tracing the scar on her palm from a diner knife slip years back. "Is this Sarah Reynolds? My name's Eleanor. I, bought a storage unit that belonged to your husband, James." Silence stretched, broken only by a faint clink, perhaps a spoon in a cup. Then, "James, that's been years. How did you find me?" Elena explained haltingly, the auction, the machines, the data drive. Her words tumbling out in the dim light, the coffee growing cold as she described the humming prototypes. The voice that had stirred unbidden. Sarah's breath hitched on the line, a sound like paper tearing. The Empathy Project. He never let it go, even after Vortex fired him. Said it could fix people, make them feel again, really feel, but it broke him first. Her voice cracked, the words laced with a sorrow that bridged the miles between their homes. Elena pictured her, a woman in a quiet kitchen much like this one, sunlight catching dust on shelves lined with forgotten frames. He stored them to protect the data, I think. From the company, from himself, the side effects. He tested on volunteers, then on us. Our marriage sessions turned into nightmares, his guilt bleeding into me, my anger into him. We separated, but he kept working alone until his heart gave out. Elena's throat tightened, the receiver warm against her ear, the apartment's walls seeming to lean in with the weight of shared loss. Tom's accident had been sudden, mechanical. JR is a slow, unraveling machine made. They talked for an hour, Sarah's voice steadying as memory surfaced, the lab in their garage, the helmet's glow late into nights. JR's eyes distant after sessions, haunted by echoes not his own. He wanted to make it safe, add those safeguards in the notes you found. But the company buried the failures, and he couldn't afford lawyers. If you have the prototypes, could I see them? Not to take, but to understand what he left. Elena hesitated, glancing at the data drive on the table, its black surface absorbing the light like a void. Return it all, close the chapter for Sarah, risk the unit's value slipping away, or hold on, salvage parts for her own fragile future. "I'll bring what I can," she said finally, the promise settling like frost on her skin. "Tomorrow, if that works." Hanging up, Elena rose, the chair scraping softly against the linoleum, her legs unsteady as she moved to the window. Outside, the complex stirred, neighbors shuffling to cars, leaves skittering across wet pavement under a sky clearing to reluctant blue. The call had shifted something, turning abstract files into flesh-and-blood regret. JR's machines no longer just tech, but fragments of a shattered life. She texted Hank, "Spoke to Sarah, she's coming, need your help." His reply buzzed quick, "On it, pick you at 8. Gratitude flickered, warm against the chill of uncertainty, this retired mechanic weaving into her days like a thread she hadn't known was fraying. By mid-morning, they were at the facility, the lot crunching under tires as Hank's truck pulled up beside her Ford. The air carried the sharp tang of wet asphalt and pine from nearby trees, the chain-link fence rattling faintly in a breeze that tugged at Elena's jacket. Hank emerged with his toolbox, thermos in hand, his nod steady as ever, eyes scanning the corridor's metal doors like sentinels. "Heard the gist. Widow, huh? Makes it real." They unlocked Unit 47 together, the bolts scrape echoing louder in the daylight, sunlight spilling in to illuminate the machine's dust-veiled forms. The large prototype stood central, its panel dark but expectant, wires coiled like dormant veins. Hank set up the laptop on a milk crate, the screen's glow harsh against the concrete walls, while Elena unpacked the manuals and drive, her hands methodical, tracing faded labels as if mapping JR as ghost. "She wants to see the safeguards he sketched," she said, voice low, the space's cool mustiness clinging to her clothes. They powered the smaller calibrator first, its hum filling the unit like a hesitant breath. Diagnostics scrolling benignly, no anomalies, just clean readouts of synced pulses. But as Hank synced the data drive, pulling up JR, those unfinished blueprints, the air thickened, the machine's fan whirring faster. "Look," he murmured, pointing to a schematic, a neural limiter designed to cap the bleed at safe thresholds, notes scribbled in frantic script. He was close, could have worked. Then, unprompted, the empathy trainer flickered, a soft chime, the helmet's lights pulsing green. Elena's breath caught, stepping back as the synthesized voice emerged, clearer now. "Safeguard protocol loading. Operator JR. Confirm integration?" The screen bloomed with code, lines cascading like digital rain, integrating the blueprint in real time. Hank's hand steadied on her shoulder, his grip firm through the denim, grounding her as fragmented audio played. JR's voice, overlaid with Sarah's from a session, their words intertwining in a loop of apology and forgiveness. "It works," Elena whispered, tears pricking, the emotional wave brushing her, not overwhelming but tender, a glimpse of connection mended. The machine stabilized, the voice concluding, "Protocol complete, ready for ethical use." They shut it down gently, the silence profound, broken only by the distant buzz of fluorescence in the corridor. Hank rubbed his neck, the stubble rasping. "This changes things. Not junk, not poison. A fix he couldn't finish. Sarah could claim it, but legally. It's yours now. Sell the lot or partner up. Clinics might pay for safe versions, therapy for folks like us, grieving. Elena nodded. The possibilities unfolding like the sunlight shifting across the floor, warming the oil-stained concrete. But the moral pull tugged harder. Honor J.R. His intent, share the redemption with Sarah, build something lasting instead of scavenging. Visions flashed, Mia embraces, a small workshop humming with repairs, Hank's steady presence no longer borrowed but woven in. Yet exposure loomed. Vortex remnants sniffing around, old lawsuits resurfacing, her name tangled in the web. As they locked the door, the key turning with a decisive click, Eleanor felt the crossroads crest. Sarah's arrival tomorrow would force the choice, return the machines whole, document the fix, let her decide their fate, or propose collaboration, turning tragedy to quiet justice. Hank clapped her shoulder, the gesture simple, his eyes reflecting the yard's golden light. You've got the heart for this, Elena. Whatever you pick, it'll be right. Driving home through streets lined with turning leaves, the wind whispering through the vents, she gripped the wheel tighter, resolve hardening like frost yielding to sun. For the first time, the unknown felt less like a threat and more like a door cracking open to light. If this story already has your heart, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena reach more people who still believe in second chances. Sarah arrived just after noon, her sedan crunching gravel in the storage facility lot, the engine cutting off with a sigh that mirrored the hesitant breath Elena drew from the open door of Unit 47. The sun hung high but pale, filtered through thin clouds, casting a diffused light over the industrial yard where chain-link fences rattled softly in the breeze. Elena stood beside Hank, her hands clasped tight to steady the tremor, the air carrying the faint, acrid scent of rust and warm metal from the corridor's peeling walls. Sarah stepped out, mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a loose bun, her coat buttoned against the autumn chill, eyes shadowed but sharp, scanning the rows of doors as if searching for a ghost. Eleanor extended a hand, the introduction awkward in the open air, words tumbling out like leaves in the wind. "Thank you for coming. It's a lot." Sarah nodded, her grip firm, calloused in a way that spoke of hands once busy in a shared life, perhaps tending the garage lab J.R. had commandeered. Hank hung back, toolbox at his feet, his presence a quiet bulwark as they led her inside. The door groaned open, sunlight spilling across the concrete floor in golden shafts, illuminating the machine's hulking forms. The large prototype central, its glass front now dust-free after their careful wiping, wires neatly coiled like resolved tensions. The empathy trainer sat to the side, helmet resting innocently, the data drive connected to the laptop on Hank's makeshift table, screen dormant but ready. Sarah paused in the threshold, breath catching at the sight, the space's cool mustiness wrapping around her like an old embrace. "He built these here, you know," she said softly, stepping forward, fingers tracing the edge of the calibrator's panel. "Our basement. Nights when sleep wouldn't come. Said it would bridge the gaps, make people understand each other's silences." Her voice wavered, the echo of fluorescent buzz from the corridor underscoring the intimacy. Elena watched, heart aching with the familiarity of loss, memories of Tom's tools scattered in their garage, flashing unbidden. They powered the machines methodically, Hank's steady hands guiding the cords, the hum building like a shared pulse. When the safeguard protocol engaged, the screen bloomed with integrated code J. Its blueprints weaving seamlessly into the system. No more warnings of overload, just a calm interface promising controlled empathy, sessions capped at safe intervals. Tears traced Sarah's cheeks as the synthesized voice confirmed, "Ethical mode active, ready for therapeutic application." She touched the helmet, the metal cool under her palm, a sob escaping. He died, thinking it was a failure. Hart gave out in his sleep, alone after our split. I sold the house, moved on. But this... Eleanor placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture tentative, the air thick with unspoken bonds. They talked then, voices low, amid the machine's faint whir. Sarah recounting the buried lawsuits Vortex had quashed, JR's isolation deepening as the tech mirrored his regrets. Elena sharing fragments of her own widowhood, the diner's endless shifts, Mia's wide-eyed hopes. Hank contributed sparingly, his rig stories grounding the ethereal tech in human cost, the scent of his thermos coffee mingling with the unit's oil-tanged air. The decision crystallized in that dim space, not in thunderous debate, but quiet clarity. "It's yours by right," Elena said, locking eyes with Sarah, the sunlight shifting to warm the concrete at their feet. "But legally, the auction made it mine. We document everything, logs, fixes, the protocol. Contact Vortex's remnants or a tech ethics firm. Sell the salvageable parts ethically. Fund clinics for grief therapy. Split proceeds if you're willing. No scavenging, no secrets." Sarah nodded, wiping her face, a faint smile breaking through. Partners, then, for what he meant it to be. Hank grunted approval, packing tools with deliberate motions, the clink of metal a punctuation to their pact. No police fanfare, no dramatic seizure, just paperwork filed with a notary downtown. Lawyers consulted pro bono through a widows' support group Sarah knew. The machines would be dismantled carefully, components refurbished for safe use, empathy sessions for couples adrift, training for counselors, the bleed tamed into healing. Months blurred into a tentative rhythm, the storage unit's contents transforming from burden to bridge. Eleanor quit the diner, her last paycheck cashed against the first check from a small partnership, Sarah handling outreach to therapy centers. Hank converting a corner of the facility into a workshop for repairs. The proceeds came steady, $15,000 initial from salvage circuits sold to a reputable firm, enough for Mia's braces gleaming silver in her smile, the apartment's rent paid 3 months ahead, and night classes in electronics that Eleanor attended with Hank's borrowed notes. His truck idling outside the community college like a sentinel. Mia drew pictures of happy helmets, chattering about helping sad people, her laughter filling the evenings as Elena stirred soup under the kitchen light, the steam carrying hints of possibility. Hank became more than ally, a quiet, constant dinners shared at the diner's quiet booths turned workshops. His gravelly laugh easing the scars of isolation. Sarah visited twice, her presence weaving their stories tighter. A shared meal where toasts were raised to unfinished work completed. Elena learned circuits and code, hands steady on soldering irons, the buzz of tools echoing JR's ghost, but bent toward light. Debts melted like frost under spring sun, the bank's shadow receding, replaced by a savings account's modest balance and dreams of a house with a yard for Mia's swings. One crisp afternoon in early spring, Elena returned to the facility alone, the lot blooming with weeds pushing through cracks, the chain-link fence humming in the breeze. Unit 47 stood empty now, door ajar after the final haul, concrete floor swept clean of dust and oil stains, walls echoing faintly with the ghosts of hums long silenced. She stepped inside, the space vast and hollow, sunlight flooding through the vent in unfiltered beams, warming the air that once held secrets. No machines, no shadows, just the quiet expanse, a monument to risks taken, doors opened with trembling hands. Her fingers brushed the frame, the metal smooth and sun-warmed. A faint smile touching her lips as Mia's voice called from the car outside, impatient for the park. In that empty room, Eleanor reflected on the courage of choices, the honest path that traded quick gain for lasting mends, turning bizarre relics into threads of compassion. Behind every locked door lay not just unknowns, but the human hearts waiting to connect, if only we dared turn the key. Subscribe for more stories of compassion, justice, and redemption. Thank you for watching the case of the bizarre machines. See you in the next one.